Fake it till we marry. A spontaneous kiss turned a random stranger into a fake boyfriend, leading to a high-stakes family dinner and, eventually, a marriage that lasted 20 years. The moment her lips touched mine, I became a fictional character in a story that somehow ended with a wedding ring. I was comfortably seated at a bar downtown, enjoying a quiet Friday evening. My attention was focused inward, nursing a cold beer and savoring the solitude, when a complete stranger approached my table. Without preamble, she reached out, cupped my face firmly between her hands, and initiated a deep kiss. This wasn't a gentle greeting. It was a full, lingering kiss that lasted several panic-filled seconds, tasting strongly of desperation and cheap red wine. When she finally pulled back, her hands remained anchored on my shoulders. Her gaze locked onto mine, pleading and intense. "I'm so terribly sorry," she breathed, her voice a frantic whisper. "But I desperately need you to act along. Please." Before I could even formulate a question, like, "What on earth is happening?" she spun around, offering a dazzling, forced smile toward a couple who had just entered our immediate vicinity. "Mom, Dad," she announced brightly, her voice suddenly smooth and controlled. "This is my partner, the one I've been sharing details about." Her mother was a stern, severely dressed woman in a crisp blazer. She appraised me slowly from head to toe, conducting a silent calculation of my presumed financial standing and social suitability. Her father was tall, possessing a broad physique and an intimidating expression that clearly stated he was prepared to launch a full-scale interrogation regarding my intentions toward his daughter. I had every opportunity to intervene. I should have instantly declared the situation a ridiculous misunderstanding, explained that I had never encountered this woman previously, and pointed out that I was merely a casual patron ambushed by unsolicited affection. Instead, I heard my own voice, smooth and falsely confident, offering, "It's truly a pleasure to finally meet you both. She has spoken of you often." The woman's grip on my shoulder tightened instantly, conveying profound, if silent, gratitude. Her mother's expression remained entirely unchanged, a study in suspicion. "That's interesting," the mother stated flatly. "She hasn't mentioned a single thing about you to us. Not your name, your profession, or how you connected. Nothing." "That's precisely because I wanted it to be a wonderful surprise," the woman interjected rapidly. "I knew you were arriving this week, and I thought it would be much better for you to meet him in person, rather than just hearing reports over the phone." Her father slowly folded his arms across his massive chest. "And your actual name is?" My eyes darted to the woman. Her own eyes reflected a mixture of panic and desperate plea. We had zero details confirmed regarding this fabricated relationship, and suddenly, I needed to produce a plausible name that fit whatever elaborate fantasy she had already conjured. "Andrew," I volunteered, selecting the first commonplace name that entered my mind. "Andrew Fletcher." "And what precisely do you do, Andrew?" the mother probed, her gaze unwavering. "I'm involved in software engineering," I replied, "mostly focusing on web applications." That detail, blessedly, happened to be entirely accurate. The woman next to me seemed to exhale a microscopic sigh of relief. "How did the two of you first meet?" her father pressed on. The woman immediately jumped in, cutting me off before I could speak. "At a local coffee shop roughly 3 months ago. I was clumsy and spilled my latte all over his expensive laptop, and I felt absolutely dreadful. So I absolutely insisted on replacing his drink." She paused dramatically, glancing at me for the next line of the script, and I asked for her contact information before she could possibly escape. I finished seamlessly, leaning into the role. The best accidental coffee disaster of my life. Her mother's rigid expression softened marginally, a development I considered a significant victory. The father, however, maintained a deeply skeptical posture. 3 months, he observed dryly. "That doesn't seem like much time at all." "It's certainly enough time to realize she is something truly exceptional," I countered instantly, and the woman squeezed my arm again. We were spontaneously constructing a relationship narrative in real time, and against all odds, we were managing not to completely fall apart. The mother checked the expensive timepiece strapped to her wrist. "We have reservations for dinner in 20 minutes. I assume you will be joining us, Andrew." My half-finished beer sat neglected on the bar counter just behind me. My original plan for the evening had involved finishing that drink, heading home, and watching the televised basketball game. Now, it appeared I was accompanying absolute strangers to an upscale dinner, pretending to be romantically involved with a person whose name I had only just learned seconds prior. "I will be delighted," I managed to say. The woman finally withdrew her grasp from my shoulder and instead took my hand, lacing our fingers together with the practiced intimacy of a couple who had been together for years. Her hand was noticeably warm and slightly trembling. We followed her parents out of the bar and onto the street sidewalk. The moment we were a safe distance behind them, she quickly leaned close to my ear. "Thank you so much," she whispered urgently. "I promise I will clarify everything later. And my name is Sophia, by the way, Andrew. But you already inferred that, because I just fabricated it in front of your perceived mother." She let out a small, slightly frantic giggle. "I am so sorry. I completely panicked. They arrived 3 days ahead of schedule, and I was utterly unprepared, and they kept inquiring about my supposed boyfriend, and I simply didn't know what to do. So, your solution was to forcefully enlist a random male stranger at a drinking establishment?" I summarized. "You were the nearest person who appeared reasonably suitable for dating purposes," she defended herself. "I truly lacked the necessary time to be selective." "Reasonably suitable for dating purposes," I repeated, nodding thoughtfully. "I'll be sure to include that compelling endorsement on my profile." She squeezed my hand affectionately. "I owe you everything for this. The dinner expense is entirely on me. And after tonight, you genuinely never need to see my face again." We soon arrived at an elegant Italian dining establishment 3 city blocks away. The hostess promptly seated us at a comfortable table near the expansive window, and I found myself positioned directly across from Sophia's parents, desperately attempting to recall every minuscule detail of the fictional history we had just improvised. 3 months, coffee shop, spilled hot beverage. Her name was Sophia. My name was Andrew, which, fortunately, was my actual legal name. At least, that essential piece of information was reliably stored. The waiter arrived to take our initial beverage requests. Sophia's father requested a stiff scotch. Her mother ordered crisp, white wine. Sophia herself requested red wine, and based on her expression, she clearly wished to consume the entire bottle herself. I ordered a standard beer and focused on projecting an aura of complete relaxation. "So, Andrew," Sophia's mother began once the server departed, "tell us something about yourself. Where did you spend your formative years?" "Illinois," I stated, "a small community just outside of Chicago. I relocated here for university and remained for professional work." All of that was fundamentally truthful. I was unintentionally being honest, which paradoxically made the required lying slightly easier to manage. "In your immediate family?" her father inquired. "My parents are still located in Illinois. I have one younger sister. She works as a high school teacher." Also true. This, bizarrely, was shaping up to be the least complicated fake relationship scenario I had ever been involved in. "Do you frequently visit them?" Sophia's father asked, leaning forward slightly. "A couple of times each year, mostly for established holidays. We utilize video calling services frequently. However," Sophia was observing me with an expression that defied easy interpretation. Perhaps grateful, but also intensely curious, as if she herself were currently learning about the person she was supposedly romantically involved with. "What exactly are your long-term intentions regarding our daughter?" her father asked abruptly, without warning or finesse. Sophia immediately choked on the water she was attempting to drink. "Dad, we have been exclusively dating for 3 months. Can we possibly avoid launching the full-scale interrogation procedures right now?" "I think it's an entirely relevant question," her mother countered calmly. "You have been exceptionally private about this current relationship. We are simply attempting to understand what exactly is transpiring." I could feel Sophia's entire body tensing rigid beside me. This was the definitive moment where I could gracefully bail out, offer a convenient excuse, and terminate this elaborate charade before it escalated further into impossibility. Instead, I reached subtly beneath the tablecloth and located her hand, mirroring the exact way she had first grabbed mine outside the bar. My sole intention is to ensure her happiness, I declared clearly. That is the whole focus. That is all I am concentrating on right now. Sophia's hand instantly gripped mine tight beneath the table. Her father studied my face for an extended, thoughtful moment, then offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod. That is a very satisfactory response, he conceded. The waiter reappeared with our beverages and proceeded to take our dinner orders. The conversation thankfully shifted toward less hazardous, more general topics. Sophia's mother discussed the details of their flight itinerary and their chosen hotel accommodations. Her father questioned me about the specifics of my job in more detail, and I proceeded to explain the intricacies of web development in a manner that made it sound far more engaging than it typically was. Sophia intermittently chimed in with supportive comments that strongly implied she possessed intimate knowledge about my work habits, my daily routines, and my overall life. She was remarkably talented at this charade, far exceeding my own improvisational skills. She referenced a fictional B-movie we had supposedly watched the previous week. She casually mentioned a neighborhood restaurant we had tried together that featured truly abysmal service but surprisingly excellent cuisine. She was systematically constructing an entire, believable relationship out of pure fantasy, and I simply followed her expert guidance, adding small, sensible details that made the entire fiction feel concrete and real. By the time our main courses were served, I was nearly convinced myself that we had actually been dating for the reported 3 months. Her parents had noticeably relaxed their initial guard. Her mother even permitted herself a genuine smile when Sophia recounted a story about me supposedly attempting to prepare dinner for her and almost triggering the fire alarm. He is significantly more skilled at ordering quality takeout, Sophia confirmed, squeezing my hand openly above the table now. Much, much better. Everyone possesses distinct strengths, I offered mildly. Her father actually emitted a sound of genuine laughter. Halfway through the meal, Sophia's phone suddenly vibrated. She glanced at the screen, and the color immediately drained from her face. "Excuse me, I need to accept this," she murmured. She rose quickly and walked toward the restaurant entrance area. Her mother watched her departure with visible concern etched on her features. "Is everything completely okay?" I asked, attempting to sound casual. "I am certain it's nothing serious," I said, despite having absolutely no reliable information. I was navigating this entire evening completely blindfolded. Her father leaned across the table toward me. "Andrew, may I be completely honest with you for a moment?" Of course, I encouraged him. Sophia has endured a difficult period this past year. The termination of her previous relationship was extremely painful for her. We worry constantly about her. She doesn't always make the most judicious decisions. I nodded slowly, unsure how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability. I knew absolutely nothing about her ex-boyfriend or her so-called difficult year. But tonight, her mother added softly, her voice carrying across the table, "Observing her with you, she appears lighter, genuinely happier. I don't know precisely what you're doing, but please continue doing it." The unexpected weight of their sincere words settled heavily upon me. They truly and deeply cared about their child. Their fundamental wish was her authentic happiness. And here I was, actively assisting her in deceiving them. Sophia returned a few minutes later, her expression meticulously blank and neutral. "Was everything all right?" I asked gently. "Perfectly fine," she stated. "Just minor work issues." But her hand was visibly trembling when she picked up her wine glass again. That phone call had definitely shaken her composure. After we finished our meal, her parents announced their intention to return directly to their hotel. They had an early start scheduled for the next morning and desired adequate rest. Sophia's mother embraced her goodbye, then, unexpectedly, enveloped me in a warm hug as well. "It was truly delightful to meet you, Andrew. I am genuinely pleased Sophia has found someone who brings her this much joy." Her father shook my hand with a grip that was slightly too firm, too demanding. Ensure you take excellent care of her. I absolutely will, I promised. They departed, and suddenly it was just Sophia and me standing side by side on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. The meticulous performance was finally over. The heavy curtain had dropped. We were once more just two random strangers. I cannot believe we managed to successfully pull that off, Sophia exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. She was still holding my hand, though I wasn't sure she had even consciously registered the fact. Your parents are utterly terrifying. I know, I admitted. I'm sorry you had to navigate that intensity. Why did you require a fake partner? I finally asked, looking directly at her. What was so catastrophic about simply informing them of the truth? She released my hand and wrapped her own arms tightly around herself, shivering slightly despite the mild evening air. The unvarnished truth is that I actually ended things with my actual boyfriend 2 months ago, and I neglected to inform them. They adored him. They were entirely convinced we were heading toward marriage. When they inquired about him during a phone call last week, I completely panicked and claimed we were still a couple. So, rather than simply telling them you broke up, you chose to invent an entirely new boyfriend instead? I summarized. When you articulate it so plainly, yes, it sounds undeniably insane. Because it is undeniably insane, I pointed out gently. She laughed then, a genuine, unforced sound that crinkled the corners of her eyes. I know how utterly crazy it is, but they were so incredibly excited about visiting and finally meeting him, and I just couldn't bear the thought of disappointing them again. There was a genuine undercurrent of sadness in her voice, suggesting that this emotional conflict ran far deeper than just a simple recent breakup. Again, I echoed, noticing the implication. She immediately averted her gaze. I dropped out of law school last year. They were less than thrilled about that decision. Then I resigned from my stable corporate job to pursue freelance graphic design, a choice they also vehemently disliked. Then, the boyfriend they universally approved of suddenly left me because I wasn't sufficiently ambitious. So, yes, she concluded, her voice heavy. I maintain a track record of letting them down repeatedly. It sounds more like you maintain a track record of making significant life choices for yourself. Instead of simply pleasing them, I offered quietly. She looked back at me, genuinely surprised by the reframing. That is actually a surprisingly thoughtful way to express that. We stood in silence for a few minutes, the city traffic rushing past, the noise from the restaurant entrance safely muted behind us. Who called you during dinner? I asked, recalling the incident. She hesitated noticeably. My ex, the one my parents still believe I am dating. What did he want to discuss? To notify me that he is engaged to someone he reportedly met 6 weeks ago. He felt it necessary that I hear the news directly from him before seeing the announcement plastered all over social media. The final pieces of the puzzle abruptly clicked into place. So, he broke up with you for not being ambitious enough, and then became engaged to a total stranger 2 months later? Apparently, she's a corporate attorney, Sophia stated, bitterness coating the words. Extremely ambitious. Highly approved of by absolutely everyone's parents, presumably. Her voice slightly wavered at the end. I'm truly sorry, I said sincerely. That is genuinely terrible timing. Timing has consistently proven to be my least reliable skill set, she sighed. She retrieved her phone and checked the display. I really should allow you to go now. You have already performed far beyond the duties expected of any rational stranger. Thank you, she finally said, her eyes meeting mine, for coming tonight, for indulging this preposterous, last-minute scheme, for being such a surprisingly credible fake partner. You are absolutely welcome, I replied. And for the record, you are a very convincing, fake girlfriend yourself. She smiled, a small, weary, but genuine expression. May I purchase you an actual, non-fictional drink to apologize for forcefully abducting you from that peaceful bar? I knew I should have declined. I ought to have gone directly home. The long night was officially finished. The strange favor had been completely executed, and we were both entirely free to return to our individual, unconnected lives. Sure, I heard myself agree. We walked back toward the original bar where this chaotic evening had commenced and secured 2 empty seats at the far end of the counter. Sophia ordered another generous glass of red wine. I ordered another cold beer. So, I began turning toward her. Tell me about the real Sophia. The one who isn't frantically inventing origin stories for the benefit of her parents. She took a long, thoughtful sip of wine. The real Sophia is essentially a catastrophe. She is 28, resides in a tiny studio apartment overflowing with entirely too many houseplants, and dedicates most of her professional time designing bland logos for tech startups that inevitably fold before launch. She possesses crippling commitment issues, generalized anxiety, and an unfortunate tendency to catastrophize every minor situation. Sounds remarkably normal to me, I assessed. What about the real Andrew? Who exactly is he when he's not pretending to be another person's romantic interest? I genuinely pondered the question. The real Andrew is 30, works remotely from his home most weekdays, and hasn't gone on a date in half a year because he is abysmal at online dating applications and even worse at initiating contact with people in actual public settings. 6 months. She sounded genuinely shocked. That seems completely impossible. I'm exceptionally adept at being alone, I maintained. That's rather tragic, she observed. It's efficient, I corrected her. She laughed fully. You are truly peculiar. You aggressively grabbed a perfect stranger at a bar and instantly forced him to meet your judgmental parents. I reminded her. You have permanently forfeited the right to label me as weird. We continued conversing for the next hour. She recounted the details about her ex-boyfriend, the ambitious lawyer who had left her because she lacked sufficient drive. I shared details about my previous long-term relationship, which had concluded because I focused too intensely on work and neglected to allocate sufficient time for the person I was dating. She enthusiastically displayed some of her recent graphic design work on her phone screen. I showed her the specialized application I was currently developing for an important client. Sometime approaching 11 o'clock, she checked her phone display. I probably should be heading out. I have a crucial client consultation scheduled early tomorrow morning. Yes, I agreed. I should also be heading home. Neither of us made any move to actually stand up. This was actually quite enjoyable, she admitted. The dinner portion was highly stressful, but this segment was genuinely nice. We should repeat this experience sometime, excluding your parents. She looked at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Are you inviting me on an authentic date? Perhaps, I admitted. Does that seem bizarre considering the highly unusual circumstances of our initial meeting? It is extremely bizarre, she confirmed, but also in a strange way kind of ideal. She retrieved her phone once more. Input your number. Your real, actual number this time. I provided the digits, and she instantly sent me a text message. The notification read, "Hello, it's your fake partner." I saved her contact information and quickly responded, "Hello, it's your fake partner who harbors aspirations of becoming your real partner." She read the text and broke into a delighted grin. That is incredibly direct. I spent 3 solid hours convincing your demanding parents that I am already dating you, I pointed out. I might as well transform the effort into reality. We exited the bar together. She hugged me briefly goodbye on the sidewalk, and this embrace felt significantly different from the panicked, desperate physical contact earlier. It felt lighter, much more authentic. Send me a message, she instructed. I will, I promised. I stood there, watching her walk toward her waiting vehicle, and I realized I could not stop the involuntary smile plastered on my face. I had started the long night anticipating watching basketball entirely alone. I was concluding it with a phone number and a promise of a future date with a woman I had encountered in the most improbable way possible. I texted her immediately upon arriving back at my apartment. Asterisk made it back safely. Your parents did not appear to follow me. Asterisk, she responded instantly. Asterisk, they actually liked you. My mom just texted me saying he seems like a highly stabilizing influence. Asterisk, should I be seriously concerned that I managed to impress your terrifying mother? I replied. Very concerned, she texted back. She is already making preliminary plans for our wedding ceremony. I laughed out loud in my quiet, empty apartment. We continued exchanging texts for another hour before finally saying goodnight. The following morning, I woke up to a notification from Sophia. Asterisk coffee? I promise I won't intentionally spill it all over your expensive laptop this time. Asterisk we arranged to meet at the identical coffee shop she had invented for our fabricated origin story. She was dressed casually in jeans and a comfortable sweater, her hair down and relaxed, contrasting sharply with the carefully styled look of the previous night. She appeared far more at ease, much more like her authentic self. "Hello, fake partner," she greeted me when I approached the table. "Hello, fake girlfriend," I returned the greeting. We ordered our respective coffees and secured a small table near the window. "So, exactly how are we supposed to proceed with this?" she asked seriously. "Do we continue the deception for the benefit of your parents? Or do we actually try to build something real?" "I vote we genuinely try this for real," I declared, with the full, mutual understanding that we are both confirmed disasters who are objectively terrible at navigating relationships. "That is genuinely the most accurate and honest first date proposal I have ever received," she conceded, a wide smile forming. She raised her coffee mug. "To becoming official disasters together." I clinked my cup against hers. "To finding a connection in the weirdest possible circumstance." We talked without pause for 2 full hours. She shared stories about growing up with exceptionally high-achieving parents who consistently failed to comprehend her creative inclinations. I talked about relocating away from my hometown to escape the crushing burden of familiar expectations. We realized we had both attended the same massive university but had never crossed paths. We both shared a profound aversion to cilantro. We both loved intensely terrible reality television programming. When we finally stood to leave the coffee shop, she naturally took my hand as we walked toward our separate cars. "Same time next week?" she asked hopefully. "How about we just aim for dinner tomorrow night?" I countered. "That seems exceptionally eager," she teased. "I have already met your parents," I reminded her. "We might as well skip the conventional, slow, build-up phase." She laughed merrily. "Okay, dinner tomorrow it is." We did go to dinner the following evening and the evening after that one. By the close of that first week, we had seen each other a total of 5 times. It was moving quickly, arguably too quickly. But there was something uniquely grounding about beginning a relationship with such a spectacular lie that made pursuing the authentic truth feel overwhelmingly important. We didn't need to play tedious psychological games or pretend to be less invested than we truly were. We had already completed the exhausting pretense required. 3 weeks into our authentic dating period, Sophia's mother called her while we were eating lunch together. Sophia put the phone on speaker mode. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, sweetie. I just wanted to check in quickly. How are things currently developing with Andrew?" Sophia glanced across the table at me. We had already discussed this specific moment, whether or not to tell her parents the complete, unedited truth. "Things are going well, Mom. Really well, actually. I'm so relieved. Your father and I really formed a positive impression of him. He seems very stable and grounded." "He is," Sophia confirmed. "When can we anticipate seeing you two again soon?" Sophia hesitated visibly. "Actually, Mom, there's a delicate matter I need to discuss with you." I reached across the table surface and gently took her hand. "The night you met Andrew," she began, her voice shaking slightly. The story I presented wasn't exactly accurate. Her mother was silent for a prolonged moment. "What exactly do you mean by that?" "We hadn't been dating for 3 full months," Sophia confessed, rushing the words out. "We had actually only just met that same night. I panicked severely when you arrived early, and I literally grabbed him at the bar and desperately asked him to pretend to be my boyfriend." The silence radiating from the phone lasted so long, I genuinely worried the connection had failed. "Sophia," her mother's voice finally returned, thick with disappointment. "You outright lied to us." "Yes, I am deeply sorry. I truly didn't know how else to handle the situation." "So this Andrew, he isn't even your genuine boyfriend?" Sophia looked directly at me. "He wasn't that night, no? But he absolutely is now. We started officially dating immediately after that evening." "I don't understand your rationale." her mother demanded. Why would you choose to do something so elaborate and dramatic? Sophia's eyes instantly welled up with unshed tears. Because I was embarrassed, Mom. Because I knew you were tremendously disappointed about the abrupt breakup with David. Because I am utterly exhausted by constantly feeling like I'm failing at every significant life endeavor. Her mother sighed deeply, a sound heavy with conflict. Sophia, we have never once thought you were failing. You did not approve of me leaving law school. You clearly disliked me quitting my corporate job. We worried about you. Her mother gently corrected. That is fundamentally different from being disappointed. But lying to us, Sophia, bringing a total stranger to dinner and making us genuinely believe he was someone critically important to you, that is crossing a boundary. I know, Sophia whispered. I truly am sorry. Is he still present? Her mother asked. This Andrew. Yes, I am here, I confirmed. May I interject briefly? Go ahead, she conceded, sounding weary. I squeezed Sophia's hand firmly. What she chose to do was highly impulsive and clearly lacked thorough consideration, but her underlying reasons originated from a good place. She cares deeply for both of you, and her greatest fear was causing you further disappointment. And for what little my opinion is worth, I added, I'm overwhelmingly glad she chose to grab me that night, because she is an incredible person, and I would never have encountered her otherwise. Another protracted silence ensued. And you are genuinely dating now? Her mother asked slowly, scrutinizing the information. This isn't another fabricated story? We are truly dating, Mom, Sophia insisted. I promise you. Well, her mother said, her tone gradually softening. I suppose that unconventional manner of meeting does result in a far better narrative than the simple coffee shop story. Sophia let out a surprised, relieved laugh. You aren't furious? I am currently processing the data, her mother stated calmly. Your father will undoubtedly have many opinions when I relay this to him. But no, I'm not mad. Confused? Absolutely. Mad? No. They spoke for a few more minutes before the call was ended. Sophia placed her phone down and stared across at me. I cannot believe I actually told her the complete truth. What do you feel right now? I inquired, terrified, incredibly relieved, and like I might spontaneously vomit, she listed honestly. All perfectly reasonable reactions, I assured her. She laughed again. Thank you for providing backup. I owe you another one. That is precisely what actual boyfriends are supposed to do, I pointed out. Her phone immediately buzzed with an incoming text notification from her father. Asterisk, your mother just provided me with all the details. We definitely need to engage in a discussion regarding established boundaries and unwavering honesty, but I must reluctantly admit it required substantial courage to grab a stranger and request that he meet us immediately. I suppose you inherited that dramatic flair from me. Asterisk Sophia showed me the screen, tears of laughter streaming down her cheeks. My dad just successfully made a joke. That is his unique way of signaling that I am essentially forgiven. Over the ensuing months, we gradually settled into a relationship that felt simultaneously brand new and deeply familiar. We had commenced under the intense, crushing pressure of a fabricated 3-month history, so the authentic relationship felt comparatively light and easier. There was no need for pretense, no awkward dating games, just two individuals who had met under the most bizarre circumstances and consciously chosen to see where the unusual connection might lead. Her parents returned for another visit 3 months following that initial dinner. This time, there was absolutely no lying involved, no need for deception, just an actual, established relationship with genuine history. At dinner, her father leaned toward me, a curious glint in his eye. So, Andrew, reflecting upon that first night, would you have acted any differently? I paused to genuinely consider the question. I probably should have posed more questions before consenting to meet you all, I conceded. But truthfully, no, I wouldn't change a single thing. I'm glad you feel that way, he said, raising his water glass. It turned out exactly as it was meant to. Her mother posed the same question to Sophia. If you could rewind time, would you grab a perfect stranger at a bar again? Sophia looked directly at me and smiled beautifully. Only if I knew it would be him. 6 months after we officially started dating, we decided to move in together. Her tiny studio apartment was clearly insufficient for both of us, especially considering her enormous collection of houseplants. So, we secured a spacious 2-bedroom unit that accommodated both our lives. My parents flew in from Illinois to assist us with the moving process and to finally meet Sophia. My mother pulled me aside privately while we were focused on unpacking boxes. "She is absolutely wonderful," she declared. "I really like her a lot." "I like her tremendously, too," I admitted. "How did you two meet again?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "You were quite vague on the phone when you told me." I told her the unvarnished truth. The complete story, from the spontaneous kiss at the bar to the panic-filled dinner with her parents, and the gradual, unexpected journey of how it all became undeniably real. My mother laughed so hard that actual tears streamed down her face. "That is indisputably the most preposterous, meet-cute story I have ever encountered in my entire life." "I know," I admitted, grinning. "You are absolutely going to be obligated to recount that full story at your wedding reception." "We aren't officially engaged yet, Mom," I reminded her patiently. She gave me a knowing, pointed look. Yet, she was, of course, absolutely correct. I had understood within the first few weeks that Sophia was truly different, that this connection was fundamentally unique. 1 year exactly after that insane night at the bar, I took Sophia back to the very same location where she had first forcefully kissed me. The same bartender who had been working that evening was miraculously there again. I had made a discreet phone call ahead of time to arrange the details. "What exactly are we doing here?" Sophia asked, a mixture of amusement and suspicion in her voice. "Recreating our unbelievable origin story." "Precisely," I confirmed. "Except this particular time, I'm the one who gets to completely surprise you." I immediately lower myself onto one knee right there, directly on the worn floor of the bar area. Patrons at nearby tables immediately turned to stare. The bartender was already discreetly recording the entire scene on my phone, exactly as I had requested. "Sophia," I began, my voice clear despite the tremor of nerves. "Exactly a year ago, you grabbed me at this bar and successfully coerced me into pretending to be your boyfriend. You dragged me forcefully to dinner with your extremely demanding parents and made me meticulously lie about our initial connection, constructing this entire imaginary relationship out of sheer desperation." She was already crying, silent tears trailing down her cheeks. "And somehow," I continued, "that elaborate, fraudulent relationship unexpectedly transformed into the most genuine, real thing in my entire life. So, I'm formally asking you now, in the exact spot where this beautiful chaos first began, will you make this permanent? Will you marry me?" She didn't wait for me to fully finish the question before shouting, "Yes." The entire bar immediately erupted in loud applause. The bartender promptly handed me my phone containing the video footage. Sophia pulled me back up and kissed me with the same intense fervor she had displayed that very first night. Desperate, real, and utterly perfect. The engagement immediately introduced a new set of challenges. Namely, the impossibility of wedding planning while attempting to explain our unbelievable meeting story to every vendor we hired. "So, you just grabbed him at a bar and made him instantly meet your parents?" our bewildered wedding planner asked, valiantly attempting to stifle a laugh. "Essentially, yes," Sophia confirmed proudly. "And then you genuinely started dating afterward?" "We reasoned we had already accomplished the most difficult part," I explained. "We might as well commit to making it real." The planner shook her head, smiling widely. "That is either the single most romantic or the single most insane story I have ever heard in my professional career. Couldn't it successfully be both?" I suggested. For our formal engagement portraits, we returned to that same pivotal bar location. The professional photographer instructed us to meticulously recreate the exact moment Sophia first grabbed me, capturing the wide-eyed, shocked expression on my face. "These are going to result in some exceptionally interesting wedding photographs," the photographer commented thoughtfully. "Good," Sophia replied instantly. "Normal is severely overrated." We sent out the engagement announcements to our friends and family, featuring one of those bar photos alongside a caption that simply read, "It started with a lie, it ended with a yes." My college roommate immediately called me. "Dude, this is the girl from the crazy bar story. You're actually marrying her." "I am," I confirmed. "That's completely bonkers." "I know. I love it. Can I personally recount that story at your wedding?" "Everyone is going to be recounting that story at my wedding." I chuckled, and they certainly did. At our formal rehearsal dinner, person after person rose to their feet and shared their unique version of hearing about our fateful meeting. My sister described the frantic phone call I made that night, detailing how utterly bewildered I sounded attempting to rationalize what had just transpired. Sophia's closest friend shared the panicked, immediate text message she had received. Asterisk, "I just physically grabbed a random guy at a bar and forced him to meet my parents. What is fundamentally wrong with my judgment?" Asterisk, her parents gave a joint, highly emotional speech about their initial profound skepticism, their deep sense of betrayal when they finally learned the truth, but ultimately, how genuinely thrilled they were that Sophia's impulsive, rash decision had yielded something so genuinely lasting and real. "We have learned that sometimes," her mother stated, her voice softening, "the straightforward path to lifelong happiness is not always the clearest. Sometimes it involves actively lying to your family and recruiting strangers in drinking establishments. We emphatically do not recommend this approach," she added with a smile, "but we certainly cannot dispute the ultimate results." The morning of the wedding arrived much faster than I had anticipated. I stood solemnly at the altar, watching Sophia begin her slow walk down the aisle toward me, and I reflected on the fact that barely 18 months prior, I had been a complete stranger to her, someone she had literally seized out of profound desperation. Now, she was moments away from becoming my wife. During my personalized vows, I spoke directly to her. "Sophia, when you spontaneously kissed me at that bar, I was faced with a stark choice. I could have firmly said no. I could have instantly walked away. I could have immediately informed your parents of the entire truth. But something deeper compelled me to agree and say yes. Perhaps it was the intensity in your eyes. Perhaps it was the sweet taste of wine on your breath. Maybe it was the universe directly instructing me to seize a wild opportunity. Whatever the underlying reason, I am profoundly grateful I listened, because saying yes to a single night of elaborate pretending unexpectedly led to a lifetime of genuine reality." I had to momentarily pause because my voice cracked unexpectedly with emotion. "You successfully taught me that sometimes the absolute best things emerge from the very worst, most ill-conceived plans. That sometimes pure courage masks itself as sheer desperation. That sometimes the person you are destined to be with shows up in the most wildly inconvenient way imaginable." Sophia was openly weeping. Half the assembled audience was also visibly crying. "I love you," I finished, my voice thick. "I loved you even when you were a complete stranger pretending to be my partner. I love you profoundly now as the person I know better than anyone else on earth. And I will love you tomorrow and every single day thereafter as your devoted husband." When it was Sophia's turn, she carefully extracted a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I actually wrote down vows," she explained, her voice uneven. "But I think I need to say something else now." She looked straight at me, her eyes shining with tears. "Andrew, I was absolutely terrified that night I grabbed you. Terrified of incurring my parents' disappointment. Terrified of facing the future alone. Terrified of admitting that I had spectacularly failed at yet another relationship. So I executed the single most impulsive, irrational action of my entire life. I physically grabbed a total stranger and instantly installed him as my fake boyfriend." She laughed weakly through her tears. "And you said yes. You didn't question my sanity. You didn't immediately flee the scene. You simply said yes and willingly followed me to dinner and met my utterly terrifying parents and played along seamlessly with my completely insane fabrication." She gently wiped her eyes with the paper. "But the crucial thing is, I wasn't only scared that night. I was also surprisingly hopeful. Because when I scanned that bar, desperately searching for someone to recruit, I looked at you, and a deep instinct within me said him. Not solely because you were the closest available option. She paused, a wry smile appearing. Okay, partially because you were the closest, she admitted, and the guest laughed. But also, profoundly because you looked inherently kind. You looked like someone who might actually consent to help. You looked like someone who might actually comprehend my predicament. She took both my hands firmly in hers. And you are. You understood my acute panic and my complicated lies and my messy, fraught relationship with my parents. You understood every single aspect, and you deliberately chose to stay anyway. You successfully turned one desperate night of make-believe into something neither of us has ever had to fake again. She squeezed my hands tightly. I love you, Andrew. I loved you when you were a stranger performing a massive favor for me. I love you now as my cherished partner and my absolute best friend. And I will love you unconditionally forever as your wife. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for not running away. Thank you for being exactly the person I fundamentally needed precisely when I needed you most. By the time she finished, I was crying too. The officiant needed to wait a moment before he could proceed because we were both attempting to regain our composure. When he finally pronounced us husband and wife, the entire room erupted in joy. We kissed, and the moment felt both exactly like that impulsive first kiss at the bar, yet completely, profoundly different. At the reception, the bartender from that fateful night showed up as a massive surprise guest. Sophia had meticulously tracked him down and invited him weeks prior. He raised his glass during the toasts. I have been working behind a bar for 15 years now, and I have witnessed a significant amount of strange activity, he began, his voice booming. But watching this specific woman grab this specific man and kiss him out of absolutely nowhere, then watching them scramble to pretend they knew each other intimately for her parents, that was definitely in the top 5 weirdest things I have ever personally witnessed. Everyone roared with appreciative laughter. But here's the kicker, he continued. I have also never witnessed 2 people gaze at each other the way these 2 did. Even that very first night, while they were clearly fabricating a relationship, there was something undeniably real existing between them from the beginning. They simply needed time and space to figure out. He raised his glass higher. To Andrew and Sophia, may your long marriage be as wonderfully unexpected and perfect as your initial meeting. We danced vigorously until our feet were aching. We took countless photos with every person we loved. We sliced a spectacular wedding cake that featured a tiny, detailed fondant figurine of a couple sitting at a bar counter on top, complete with a miniature woman grabbing a miniature man's face. Sophia's inventive idea, naturally. My best man delivered a speech describing the confused phone call I made to him that night. He said, and I quote, I have just encountered a girl who either genuinely believes I am her partner or is currently experiencing some kind of major psychological episode. I'm genuinely unsure which it is, but I have a weird feeling I like her. And I firmly advised him, that is the most idiotic thing I have ever heard you say. Do not get involved in that situation. And he replied, too late, I'm already at dinner with her formidable parents. Everyone howled with amusement. So, in reality, this entire marriage is my fault. If he had only listened to my sensible advice, none of this beautiful disaster would have occurred. You're welcome. Later that evening, Sophia's father pulled me aside quietly. You know, when she initially confessed the truth about how you truly met, I was undeniably angry. I felt genuinely manipulated. I absolutely understand that feeling, I acknowledged. But observing you 2 today, he continued, his gaze softening, seeing the genuine affection in how you look at each other, I recognized something fundamental. The circumstances surrounding the connection were certainly unusual, but the underlying connection itself was profoundly real. That cannot be successfully faked. He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. Take excellent care of my daughter, Andrew. Even when she makes highly impulsive decisions and physically grabs strangers in taverns. Especially then, I corrected him gently. He laughed softly and walked away. At the very end of the night, Sophia and I stood in the expansive parking lot of the venue, both of us utterly exhausted and profoundly happy. "We actually did it," she whispered, leaning her head against mine. "We genuinely got married." "We absolutely did," I confirmed. "How do we possibly arrive here? From a random bar to this moment." I pulled her close into a tight embrace. "You grabbed me forcefully," I reminded her. I said yes. Everything else simply unfolded from that choice. "Best impulsive decision I have ever made," she agreed. "Best yes I ever gave," I countered. We drove to a hotel situated near the airport. We were scheduled to fly to Italy for our honeymoon early the next morning. But before we fully left, before we officially commenced that next major chapter, we made one final, crucial stop. We drove back to the original bar. It was late, nearing midnight, but the establishment was still open for business. We walked inside and found seating in the exact same spots where we had first talked openly after the stressful dinner with her parents. The same longtime bartender saw us enter and grinned widely. "Back so soon? The marriage didn't take, I take it?" "Just felt the need to conclude where we officially started," Sophia explained. He poured us 2 complimentary drinks on the house. "To the most wonderfully weird couple I have ever encountered." We clinked glasses gently and drank the toast. "Do you ever occasionally wonder what might have transpired if you had grabbed a different person?" I asked her, voicing a long-held curiosity. Sophia thought about it deliberately. "All the time, naturally, but I didn't. I grabbed you. But why me, specifically?" I pressed her. "Truly, what was the reason?" She looked at me for an extended moment, her expression warm. "Honestly, you were smiling. Not directed at anything particular, just sitting there alone, radiating quiet contentment. And I distinctly thought, that is someone who seems reasonably okay with himself. That's someone who might potentially be okay with me, too." I was not nearly as okay with myself as I appeared, I admitted softly. "Neither was I," she agreed. "But we figured it out together." We finished our drinks slowly and departed the bar one final time as a newly married couple. As we walked toward the car, Sophia paused and looked back at the glowing entrance sign. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what specifically?" "For simply being present at that bar. For being the specific person I instinctively chose to grab. For saying yes when every rational voice must have been telling you to run away and say no." I kissed her gently. "Thank you for the sheer impulse to grab me in the first place." We flew to Italy the next morning. We spent 2 incredible weeks consuming copious amounts of pasta, drinking local wine, and extensively exploring ancient cities neither of us had ever visited. On our final night in Rome, we were seated at a charming restaurant offering a breathtaking view of the illuminated city. Sophia pulled out her phone. "My mom texted me earlier," she shared, reading the screen. She said she has been deeply reflecting on our story, and she wrote, "I am genuinely glad you panicked that night. Sometimes the absolute greatest blessings emerge from our apparent worst decisions." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Your mom is actually pretty intelligent. Don't ever tell her that," Sophia warned playfully. "She will never allow me to forget it." We flew back home and smoothly settled into our apartment as a cohesive, married couple. We hung our cherished wedding photographs on the walls, prominently including the striking images taken at the bar where we first connected. Friends who visited consistently inquired about those unusual photos. We meticulously recounted the full story every single time, and it never once grew tiresome. 6 months after the wedding, Sophia received an unexpected call from a popular podcast dedicated to unusual love stories. They had heard about us through a mutual acquaintance and requested an interview. "Should we actually do this?" she asked, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Why not?" I reasoned. "We have already told every person we know. We spent an engaging hour on the podcast, sharing our complete story." The host repeatedly laughed in genuine disbelief. "So, you just physically grabbed him without any concrete plan whatsoever?" "Without any plan at all," Sophia confirmed. "And you simply went along with the crazy scheme?" he asked me directly. "I did," I admitted. "But why did you agree to it?" he pressed. I thoughtfully considered my response. "Because life is often too brief and generally quite predictable. Mundane things happen every day. And when something truly interesting appears, even if it is completely weird and logically nonsensical, you should probably just make the choice to say yes. The podcast episode rapidly went viral. We started receiving countless messages from complete strangers, telling us how much they loved our narrative, how it restored their hope, and how it inspired them to embrace taking more chances. One message stood out particularly. It was from a woman who claimed she had been present at that exact same bar the night Sophia initially grabbed me. I saw the entire chaotic event unfold, she wrote. Asterisk, I actually watched you two having dinner through the restaurant window across the street. I was waiting for my own date, who ultimately never arrived. I was feeling quite sorry for myself, but then I saw you two, and I thought, well, at least someone is having a memorable night. I had absolutely no idea what I was truly observing. Asterisk, she continued. Asterisk, reading about how you ended up married made me suddenly realize that sometimes what appears to be pure chaos from an external perspective is, in fact, the beautiful genesis of something wonderful. Thank you sincerely for sharing your unique story. Asterisk, Sophia cried deeply when she finished reading the message. We actually impacted a stranger's life. We did, I agreed. That is fundamentally insane. Everything about us is insane, she smiled. 1 year after our wedding day, we returned to the bar for our anniversary. It had naturally evolved into a sacred tradition. The longtime bartender saw us entering and already had our drinks perfectly prepared. The anniversary couple, he declared, setting down my beer and Sophia's wine. Year 1 complete. How is married life treating you? Weird and wonderful, Sophia replied easily. Just like every other aspect of our relationship. We sat in our usual seats and toasted successfully, surviving 1 full year of marriage. Do you think we will still be consistently doing this in 10 years? Sophia asked, looking around the room. Coming back here every single anniversary? I certainly hope so, I said. What about 20 years from now? 50? I surveyed the familiar interior of the bar. As long as this particular establishment remains standing, yes, I think we absolutely will. She leaned her head comfortably onto my shoulder. Good. I genuinely love our traditions. Especially the delightfully weird ones, I confirmed. 2 years after our wedding, Sophia joyfully announced that she was expecting a baby. We were at home when she shared the news, and I immediately suggested we celebrate the massive news at the bar. We are celebrating this momentous news at the location where I criminally ambushed you, she laughed. Where else would we possibly celebrate? I retorted. We went that night. The bartender offered us warm congratulations and provided us with sparkling cider instead of our usual alcoholic drinks. This specific location is going to be a crucial part of your child's origin story, he mused. How do you two feel about that responsibility? Proud, Sophia declared firmly. Our kid is going to possess the most ridiculously weird "how did mom and dad meet" story of anyone in their entire school class. When our beautiful daughter was born, we chose the name Grace. Not after any particular relative, simply because we liked the sound of it, but also because Grace felt like the most fitting word for everything that had unexpectedly transpired between us. Grace for Sophia's brazen, impulsive decision. Grace for my open willingness to simply say yes. Grace for the beautiful, complicated life that followed. We brought Grace to the bar when she was just 3 months old. The friendly bartender took a precious photo of the 3 of us seated in the exact spots where Sophia and I had first truly connected. This photo is absolutely going up on the wall, he announced. You two are now officially certified bar legends. When Grace grew old enough to ask how we had first met, we told her the complete truth. The entire, unedited story. Nothing whatsoever was omitted. She listened intently, her eyes wide with fascination. Mommy grabbed a random stranger, she summarized. Mommy grabbed Daddy, Sophia gently corrected. But yes, technically a stranger at the time. That's utterly silly, Grace concluded. It is silly, I agreed wholeheartedly. But it definitely worked out better than we could have ever planned. As Grace developed, she loved hearing the famous story. She frequently asked us to recount it at bedtime, adding increasingly complex questions each time we repeated it. What if Daddy had chosen to say no? Then I would have been obligated to grab someone else entirely. What if absolutely nobody said yes to you? Then I would have had to tell Grandma and Grandpa the painful truth. Would that have been truly awful? Sophia and I exchanged a knowing glance. It would have been honest, I said slowly, which is generally a preferable option to lying, even if it is significantly scarier. When Grace was 7, she was assigned a school project about her immediate family. She adamantly insisted on including the story of how we first met, complete with charming illustrations she drew of Sophia forcefully grabbing my face at the bar. Her teacher requested a parent conference. Grace's presentation was certainly unique. The teacher observed carefully. She states that you two initially met because her mother physically grabbed you at a bar and instantly forced you to meet her grandparents. That summary is factually accurate, Sophia confirmed proudly. The teacher appeared unsure precisely how to react to this unusual admission. It is certainly unconventional, she offered diplomatically. That is one viable word for it, I smiled. But it is the genuine truth. We make a point of telling Grace honest stories, even the highly unusual ones. The teacher smiled warmly. Well, it unquestionably made for the most memorable classroom presentation this year. The other students couldn't stop discussing it. Grace beamed widely with pride. On our 10th wedding anniversary, we returned to the bar, as was our yearly custom, but this time we brought Grace along with us. She was 8 years old and buzzing with excitement to see the exact location where her parents' wild story began. "This is it?" she asked, looking skeptically around the dimly lit room. I genuinely thought it would be much fancier. "It is fundamentally a neighborhood bar, sweetie," Sophia explained. "They are rarely fancy establishments." The bartender, who had faithfully worked there all 10 years we had been coming back, mixed Grace a special Shirley Temple. "Your parents' story is the most beautiful love story I have ever personally witnessed," he told her sincerely. "And I have watched countless people meet at this bar. They are extremely weird," Grace stated matter-of-factly. "The best individuals usually are," I agreed, winking at her. We sat in our usual seats, Grace positioned between us, and toasted to a full decade of marriage. "I simply cannot believe it has been 10 years already," Sophia marveled. "It feels like only yesterday, and simultaneously like forever ago. Do you harbor any regrets?" I asked her quietly. "Regrets about grabbing a total stranger?" "Never," she stated unequivocally. "The best worst decision I ever made." Grace gently tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, please tell me the story again." "We just told you the entire thing this morning," Sophia reminded her. "I know," Grace insisted, "but I want to hear it right here, in the actual place where it truly happened." So we told the incredible story once more, seated in the exact positions where it all commenced. We spoke of profound panic and instantaneous impulse, and the massive decision to say yes to something bizarre. We talked about a fictitious relationship transforming into authentic, undeniable love. We spoke of taking significant chances and finding enduring love in the most unforeseen places. When we concluded, Grace nestled into Sophia's side and sighed happily. "I'm truly glad Mommy grabbed you, Daddy." "Me too, kid," I replied, squeezing her tight. "Me too." We remained there for another peaceful hour, just the three of us in the loud, familiar bar where everything began, where two unrelated strangers became something far greater, where intense pretending became tangible reality, where sheer panic surprisingly became true love. Later that evening, after we had tucked Grace into bed, Sophia and I settled onto the living room couch. 10 years, she murmured, resting her head on my chest. Since that night at the bar. The best decade of my life so far. Mine too, I confirmed. She curled up closer against me. "Do you ever consider what might have occurred if everything had unfolded differently? If you had said no to all of it? But you hardly provided me with much of a choice," I teased. "You simply grabbed me and immediately started telling elaborate lies to your parents." She laughed softly. "True. My bad. Sorry about that." "Don't be," I insisted. "The best thing that ever happened to me We sat in a comfortable, deep silence, the kind of profound quiet that only develops after many years spent together. After countless essential conversations, minor arguments, and heartfelt makeups, after successfully building a beautiful life from virtually nothing. Andrew, she said after a long moment. Yeah. Thank you again for simply saying yes. I kissed the top of her head gently. Thank you for the courage to ask. 15 years after that fateful night at the bar, we took Grace, who was now a somewhat reluctant teenager, back to our special anniversary spot. She rolled her eyes dramatically when we suggested the outing. Do we seriously have to go? That specific place is so incredibly old. That specific place is where your loving parents met. Young lady, Sophia reminded her. It is a time-honored tradition. Grace joined us, though reluctantly, but by the time we arrived, she was already smiling faintly. The bar had recently changed ownership, and our favorite bartender had long since retired, but the essential atmosphere of the place still felt familiar. We took our usual spots and ordered our standard drinks. Grace ordered a fizzy soda and quickly pulled out her phone. Mom, Dad, can I ask you a serious question? Certainly, I encouraged her. Do you honestly think grabbing a total stranger is sound relationship advice? Sophia and I looked at each other and burst into loud laughter. Absolutely not, Sophia stated firmly. Then why do you always narrate the story as if it is extremely romantic? Because it fundamentally is romantic, I explained, but is also profoundly lucky. Most of the time, grabbing a complete stranger in a bar does not end with a stable marriage and a family. So, what is the genuine lesson here? Grace demanded. We paused, considering the wisdom we wished to impart. Take significant chances, Sophia finally said, even when those chances feel terrifying. And when someone offers you something entirely unexpected, I added, don't automatically refuse the idea. Sometimes the weird, complicated paths are the ones that lead you exactly where you need to be. Grace considered our dual advice carefully. Okay, that is actually pretty sound advice. We finished our drinks and left the bar. On the walk back to the car, Grace shared a thought. You know, when I'm older and I meet someone, I'm going to have to devise a much better story than we met on some dating app. Or, Sophia suggested gently, you could simply choose to be honest about precisely how it happens. That is usually the most compelling story anyway, even if it seems boring initially. Nothing truly real is ever boring, I countered. 20 years after that defining night at the bar, Sophia and I returned alone once more. Grace was away at university, establishing her own life and crafting her own unique stories. We sat in our customary spots and ordered our usual drinks. The establishment had undergone yet another transformation. New owners, a new service staff, new decor, but we faithfully kept returning. 20 years, Sophia mused, shaking her head in amazement. 2 full decades since I impulsively grabbed your face and permanently ruined your peaceful Friday night. The best ruined Friday night of my entire existence, I assured her. She took my hand across the glossy bar top. Do you think we would have ever met through any other means if I hadn't forcefully grabbed you? I honestly don't know the answer, I admitted. Maybe, maybe not. I often try to believe we would have eventually. That somehow, some way, we were fundamentally destined to find each other. Perhaps, I said. Or maybe you were simply exceptionally fortunate, grabbing a stranger who happened to be unattached and highly willing to follow along with your utterly insane scenario. Luck, destiny, divine intervention. Call it whatever you like, she conceded. I will gladly accept the outcome. We sat in comfortable silence, observing the other patrons coming and going. Young couples on tentative first dates, groups of close friends meeting for after-work drinks, complete strangers who might potentially become something far greater. Andrew, Sophia said, her voice soft. Yeah, if I possessed the power to go back and alter anything, I would not change a single detail. Not even the high-stakes lying to your parents' part. Not even that, she confirmed, because every single messy detail led us directly to this moment. All of it. I squeezed her hand in return. Me neither. We finished our final drinks and departed the bar one last, cherished time. As we walked slowly toward our car, Sophia looked back one more time at the entrance. "Same time next year?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "Always, I promised." And we faithfully honored that promise. Every year, on every single anniversary, we returned. Back to the humble place where two disconnected strangers became something far greater. Where elaborate pretending transformed into permanent reality. Where one impulsive, desperate decision fundamentally changed absolutely everything. I pretended to be a person's boyfriend for one single night. And now, 2 decades later, I am still proudly her husband. Still choosing to say yes to her wild ideas. Still profoundly grateful she grabbed me in that bar. Still living the best, most unexpected life I could have possibly imagined. If you enjoyed hearing this sprawling, unexpected story of love and chaos, you'll definitely want to experience the next ones we share too. So, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and join the Reddit Chronicles. Let me know in the comments below. If you had one night to commit to a ridiculous plan, what's the craziest thing you would do?